Actually, the worship team sang my message, and then Pastor Susan preached my message already, and so I'm done. Thank you for being here today. You'll beat everyone to the restaurants today. Have you guys heard the phrase "the hustle"? Like you're hustling, you're going out there and you're doing everything that you can to. I see some nod, some not. I don't know about you guys, but on my social media, there's everybody right now is like, this is how you make residual income. This is how you do this. This is how you invest. This is how you do these things. And none of those things are bad, but it seems like right now, the hustle is just, it's out there. It's in the forefront. It's coming. It's overtaking everything. And money isn't the root of all evil. Those things aren't bad. The love of money is. But it seems like here lately, for whatever reason, everyone is hustling. And I don't know if it's whatever it is, but everybody seems to be doing that. And we're all naturally selfish people, right? Oh, just me, sorry, okay. I know that's not true because I have a 2-year-old and 2 years of anecdotal proof that people are selfish naturally. My 2-year-old is something else. So something that she does actually is Johnny. You guys have probably seen. You'll take her, okay? I'm not giving her up. I'm just saying she will hustle you. Y'all know Johnny Hale that works here at the church. So a few months back, Johnny started giving my daughter Emerson dollars. So he'd see her and he'd go up and he'd say, "Oh, Mama, buy you some candy or buy you something," and then we get bothered about it for the next however long until we go to the dollar store or something like that. And so that kept happening. Well, one day Johnny comes up and he takes money out of his pocket and he hands her $1. And Emerson said, "You have a second $1." And he's like, "Yeah?" And she goes, and so Johnny had to give up his second $1, and I said, "Johnny, you've fallen a long way, man. You just got hustled by a 2-year-old." But that's our natural state, right? Is as children, as people, we're all, naturally selfish. We want the best things for ourselves, and again, not bad things, but that's our natural state of being. Every person in the world wants the bigger house. They want the newest car. They want 2 more inches on their television. They want 4K, not 1080, and you want all this stuff that makes us feel better about what we're able to provide, what we're able to do, and all those things. So we have this innate desire to hustle. We have this innate desire to want more and better for ourselves. If you don't believe that, my child is hustling people on the church parking lot. But that's our innate desire. That's what we all do just naturally. As people, that's what we do. We try to get the best things for ourselves. So today we're going to talk about one of the best people to ever play the hustling game, and that's Jacob. You guys have probably heard the story of Jacob in the Bible. It was in Genesis, and if you haven't heard this whole story, I encourage you. It's like 4 or 5 chapters, but it's really interesting. In Genesis, it starts in chapter 25. If you want to go read all of that, it's really good. I'm going to just kind of touch on points today, but Jacob was a person that was born a hustler. So in Genesis 25, 24 through 26, it says, "When her days leading to the delivery were in an end, behold, there were twins in her womb. Now the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding on to Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. And Isaac was 6 years old when he gave birth to him." So the first thing that we see is that Jacob comes out holding on to the heel of his brother, just trying to make it out first. I don't know if he's trying to pull Esau back or he's trying to come, I don't know, but that's the first thing that he does is he's hustling to try to get there first. And Jacob's name literally means heel grabber. That's literally what his name means. So even his name gives the perception that his life is going to be to hustle. It's going to be to try to overtake somebody, to try to be better than everybody else, to try to do more and try to do more faster and do all those things. Again, not bad things. If you guys are thinking about yourself right now, these aren't bad things. We're going to talk about it, but these aren't bad things. But Jacob's life was one of hustling. If you read all these chapters, it goes through and it talks over and over and over about all the things that Jacob did to one-up somebody or to do better than somebody. But in his father's eyes, Jacob was always the second best. He was always second best. He was the second born, and the second born didn't have the rights to the birthright that his older brother had the rights to. And even in Genesis 25:28, it says, "Now Isaac loved Esau loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob." So even in this, Jacob was seen as second in the eyes of his father his whole life. And that kind of gives Jacob this mentality through his whole life. Could you imagine being a child and knowing that your father loves you less than your brother or your sister? Could you imagine being that person and going, well, I'm never going to be as good as this? I could see that creating in a person the desire to want to do more and better things to please your father. I could see that creating this mindset of always wanting to do something bigger and better so that someone might like you a little bit more. And ultimately, that's the hustle. That's what we all have this desire to do. If you see these ads or these companies that promote and do commercials and all these things, you'll see that they always want to make it look like it's the next big thing. This is the next big thing. This is something if you want to keep up with your neighbor already has this, and so you need to get one better, and you need to do this and that. That's the hustle. These companies are trying to convince you that you need this next thing. You need this next step. You need this one step bigger. You need this one more thing. And that's the same feeling that Jacob had. Jacob's father gave him nothing. Jacob took or worked for everything he had. Jacob's father gave him nothing. Jacob learned to take, to keep, and to hold on from his father. Everything that Jacob had, he took it or he held on to it, he kept it because of his father giving him these ideas. I don't love you as much. So he learned that, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna have to take this, I'm gonna have to keep this, those are the things that he learned. And we all learn that. We all learn to hustle based on our life experiences. We learn to take or to hold on to or to keep or all these things because of what happens to all of us. That's what Jacob believed, was that he was owed something that his father never gave him. And if he was owed it, he was going to take it. So he knew, he believed that I'm owed this thing. And if nobody's going to give it to me, then I'm going to take it. That's where we cross the line into the love of money. That's when we cross the line into that, is when we believe that we're owed something. And it doesn't have to be money. It can be anything. We believe that we're owed something and people aren't giving it to us, so we're just going to take it. Who does that make the provider? It makes us the provider. It puts us in the position to say, well, if God's not going to give this to me, I'm just going to go out and take it, and I'll be the provider. When in reality, what do we know? Jeremiah 29:11. God has great plans for us. And so if God didn't give it to us, it wasn't for us in the first place. It wasn't the right plan for us. So if we're making ourselves the provider, we are hustling ourselves into a place that we're not supposed to be. We're hustling ourselves into a position we're not supposed to be in. We're hustling ourselves into relationships, into money, into houses, into cars, into 2-inch bigger TVs that we're not supposed to have. Because we're creating in ourselves the ability to be the provider. And ultimately, that's what we have to learn as Christians, is that we're not the provider, God is. That's the ultimate goal as a Christian. So he spent his whole life fighting for what was his, not with his hands, but with his mind. You ever met somebody that's like this, that's literally the smartest person in the room? You met somebody and they're just outwitting everybody. They're kind of annoying, right? But that's the type of person that Jacob was. He used his intellect to get what he thought he was owed. And maybe you're in that position. Maybe you're not the smartest person in the room, but maybe you have power that somebody doesn't have. Maybe you have intellect that somebody doesn't have. Maybe that you have money that somebody doesn't have. We have to use what God has given us for the right things. We have to use what God has given us to fulfill the plan. If God blesses you, you have to turn around and use that for the plan of God. You can't turn around and use the thing that God has blessed you for to hustle people out of things that they should have, the promise that God has given them. So he spent his whole life fighting, maybe not physically, but he spent his whole life fighting for things that he wasn't supposed to have in the first place. He felt like he was owed these things. He felt like he deserved these things. And so he spent his whole life fighting these things. So if you had something that Jacob wanted, he would outsmart you. If you had something that Jacob wanted, he would win. He would do whatever it took to win, to get that thing. You can ask Esau, his brother. Genesis 25-29. We won't have these passages on the screen. I'm just going to kind of summarize them. But in Genesis 25-29 through 32, it says that Jacob was cooking one day. Esau comes in from the field. He's hungry, and he says to his brother, "Give me food or I'm going to die." And Jacob says, "Give me your birthright and I'll give you food." And so eventually Esau said, he's saying, "Well, look, I'm going to die. You got to do something here." And Jacob says, all you got to do is give up the thing that rightfully belongs to you and give it to me. That's all you have to do. Esau eventually gives in. He sells him his birthright for food. So you can ask Esau. The birthright that was rightfully Esau's was now Jacob's. The birthright that God had planned for Esau, he was born first. He literally was owed that thing. Jacob now owns it. You can ask Jacob's father, Isaac. Genesis 27 tells how Jacob stole the blessing that Isaac had intended for Esau. So, Isaac is going blind. He's starting to lose his sight, and he says he's going to bless Esau. He tells Esau to go out, hunt for food, bring it back, make food, and then he was going to bless Esau right after that. And so Jacob's mother, remember, who loves him more, Jacob's mother overhears this, tells Jacob, "I'll make the food, you go in there and give it to him, and then you'll get the blessing that you're not owed. You'll get the blessing that you're not owed." So he does this. He goes in. He puts things on his arm to make him feel more hairy, to make him feel more like his brother. And he goes in there and he takes the birthright the blessing that's not rightfully his. It would seem that a blessing is not a bad thing to take. It would seem that, we can all have or want the same blessing. We all want to be blessed, right? But this blessing was specific to Esau. This was specific to Esau's plan. And so we can walk in a calling and an anointing that's not rightfully ours. We can be in a position of having something that's not rightfully ours and look like it was ours, look like it was promised to us, but the blessing was actually not for us. We have to be careful that we're not hustling so hard that we take someone else's blessing, something that they were made to do, something that they were born to do. Shameless plug, go back and watch Find Your Wife from the beginning of this year. It was really, really great. That will tell you exactly what you're meant to be doing, your blessing and your purpose. But if we're just hustling so hard that we're taking every position that comes our way, if we're doing all these things to just try to get to the next step and the next rung on the ladder, the next level, whatever it is, we'll end up in a position to take someone else's blessing. We'll end up in a position where we said yes to a purpose that wasn't ours to begin with. And then we'll be unhappy, we'll be unfulfilled, we'll be all of those things that come along with that. He was in this position. He made a meal, came in dressed as his brother Esau, and claimed he was him in order to take something that wasn't him. Ask Jacob's father, Isaac. The blessing is now Jacob's. So now he's taken a birthright, he's taken a blessing, he's done all these things, and he's in this position to be pretty set up. He now has everything that his brother should have had, and he's in a good position now. You can ask Jacob's uncle Laban. So Jacob goes on, and he's starting to look for a wife, and so they send him to Rebekah's brother Laban and says, "Go work for him, take a wife, and do those things. So Jacob goes. He actually takes 2 wives and then several others. If you if you go down and read through that, Pastor said that's a problem. Yes, I'm not going to go into that, but yes, that's an issue. So Genesis chapter 29 through 31 tells of all the things that he took from Laban. He goes through and he takes daughters, flocks of goats, livestock, all this stuff, and he tricks them. So he takes the goats and he separates them, and then he has them intermingle until he has actually the best of the flock. So he tricks them, and he does all this stuff just to have more stuff. And in this time, that's literally money. You're taking money from somebody else. He does all this. He keeps hustling and hustling and hustling just to say, I have the best. That's his whole goal. I have the best. I have the best plan, the best purpose. Look at all these wives I have. Look at all these kids I have. Look at all these goats I have. That doesn't seem like a real flex, but look at all this stuff that I have. And all of it wasn't supposed to be his in the first place. None of these things were supposed to be Jacob's, but he's hustling. We can get in that same position to where we're hustling and we're doing all this stuff and we're getting into this situation. We're getting more and more things, and it looks on the outside like we're doing something incredible. It looks on the outside like we have all the best stuff. We have all the coolest things. We have all the new toys. But in reality, we're straying further and further and further away from the purpose and the plan that God has for us. This isn't what God had in mind for Jacob from the beginning. So this keeps happening and keeps happening and keeps happening. And there's this thing that's happening right now on social media. I don't know if I've told this story before. I don't think so. But so I have a friend that I graduated high school with. We graduated the same year. And so I'm friends with her on social media, and then we graduated, so obviously we knew each other. And so I kept seeing her and her husband are in Mexico, and they're in all these places. They're in Arizona, and they're in California and Florida, and they're doing all this stuff. I'm like, they're literally always on vacation. And I'm seeing all this, and I'm going like, what in the world did I do to not be like, we graduated the same year, we're the same age. I think I got better grades than her, I don't know. But what did I do to not do that? Like, she is literally always on vacation. I want that. I want to do all these things. Well, it turns out she's a traveling nurse. So she literally is working every day in all these. So yeah, she's posting cool pictures of, look at this thing I did, look at this, whatever. But I'm comparing myself to her, and I'm going, what did I do? And I'm here blessed with a family and children and a house and a car and the job that I've wanted since I was 15 years old and all this stuff. And I'm looking at her and going, what did I do wrong? When in reality, I feel like I'm walking in my purpose. We can get so caught up, especially with social media. If you're on social media, great, keep doing it. But don't compare yourself to everybody else's purpose and plan and go, why didn't God bless me with that thing? Then that's when we get into this situation. That's when we start hustling. That's when we start doing things out of our character and out of our purpose. That's when we start taking steps in the wrong direction, off the path that God has for us. Is when we start comparing ourselves to other people and saying, that's the thing that I really was supposed to have. God doesn't know the best plan for me. Obviously, no one would ever say that, but that's ultimately what we're saying. This plan that God has me on isn't the right one. Look at the cool stuff that they're getting to do. So, Jacob continues to hustle. You can ask God in Genesis 32, 24 through 33. This won't be on the screen, but I'm going to read it. It says, Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated while he wrestled him. Then he said, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have contended with God and with men and have prevailed. And Jacob asked him and said, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, and he said, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been spared. I really enjoy the New American Standard Bible. It's a really great translation. There are tons of great translations out there, but the New American Standard is really good. And then at the bottom, it has notes for other words that it could have originally meant in those passages. And so in this passage, it says, I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared. And another translation for that could be, yet my soul has been saved. So you can ask God about Jacob, but you really should ask Jacob. Jacob wrestled with God in the darkness. Jacob had hustled all his life for the things that he thought that he wanted. All of us in this room, that's what we do. We hustle to try to get the things that we think we want. We hustle to try to get the things that we think we deserve, the things that we think that we need. Birthrights, blessings, wives, flocks, and this was one more time that he thought that he would fight for something and win. We do this. We fight our entire lives for things that we think that we want or we need. We beg, borrow, and steal to get ahead. We do everything we can for the nicest car or house or the next fix. I'm talking about Papacitos, not drugs. I really love fajitas from Papacitos, by the way. That's really the whole reason we moved to Houston, was for Papacitos. Jacob spent his whole life fighting, and he came to the fight that he couldn't win. He came to the fight that he literally could not win. Some of you are struggling in this room today. Some of you are here today and you feel like, I'm in a fight that I cannot win. Maybe you're in a position you weren't supposed to be in. Maybe you've hustled yourself into an area you weren't supposed to be in. Maybe you've hustled yourself into someone else's purpose or someone else's blessing or birthright. Maybe you've hustled yourself into someone else's goats. I don't know. He was wounded by God, crippled by God, and broken by God. But that's how Jacob won. Because when you fight God, winning doesn't mean breaking God, it means being broken. When we fight God, our lives are only changed. We're only set on the right path when he's not the one broken, but we are. That's when we're really walking in our purpose, in our plan. When God breaks the selfishness off of us, when God breaks all of our striving and our hustling and all of these things, when he breaks those things off of us and we're able to actually walk in the purpose and the plan that God has, that's when we're really doing what we're supposed to be doing. When you wrestle God and lose, you actually won. At this time, his name was also changed. His name was changed. His name was Jacob, heel grabber, literally someone who hustles. His name was Jacob, but he became Israel, God fights. So his name was literally changed for, I'm going to fight for everything that I have. I'm going to take it. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to do whatever I can to get my purpose, to God fights. It was changed from, I'm going to take this stuff, to I'm going to do everything that I can for God to fight for me. You cannot break God. He will break you. And then, only then, he will fight for you. If you y'all ever, any Astros fans? I actually really love the Astros. We never watched a game before we got here, and now I love the Astros. You guys heard of a pinch hitter? Yeah. So, or someone that will run the bases for you. I always thought that was kind of cheating, but so if I were to get a pinch hitter or someone to run the bases for me, I wouldn't pick someone that was slower than me or that couldn't hit as far as I could, right? If I was if Pastor said he was going to beat me up in the parking lot, I wouldn't send someone smaller than me. I would send someone bigger than me, right? So in this case, that's the only time that it makes sense. That's the only time that it makes sense for us to lose to God, him to fight for us, is because God is more powerful than we are. That's why this works. That's why the Christian faith works. Because when we stop hustling and we turn over everything to God, when we stop saying, I'm the provider, and we start saying, you're the provider, that's when we're able to do the things that we're really supposed to be doing. That's when we're on the purpose and the plan and the path that we're really supposed to be on, when God fights for us. You also become the blessing to others that you were trying to steal from others. So in this story, he's going and he hears that Esau is coming, his brother that he's betrayed, tricked. Esau swears that he's going to kill him chapters before, and so he starts sending all this stuff out ahead of him, right? So he starts sending Amazon packages and all these things to Esau before. This is the New Living Translation. He starts sending all this stuff out, and his hope is that Esau will see this and go, oh, all is forgiven. What you did to me doesn't matter. Look, I changed my mind. You just keep sending those Amazon packages, and we're good. So what happened was he sends all this stuff out, then he wrestles God, and then the next day, he actually meets his brother Esau, and his brother runs up and hugs him, kisses him. And he says, did you get my stuff? You get my package? Just making sure that you got my stuff. And Esau says, hey, I'm wealthy. I'm in my calling. You keep your stuff. So when he lost to God, when he let God start fighting for him, he became the blessing to others that he was trying to steal from others. Before Jacob was, this is something really interesting that I saw. Before Jacob was born, God told Rebekah, Jacob's mother, something about Jacob. And this is going back. So we're going to go back before what we read at the beginning. This is Genesis 25, 22, and 23. It says, but the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it is so, why am I in this condition? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples will be separated from your body, and one people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. And so, obviously, literally, they're talking about Jacob and Esau, right? But I had a professor at SUM that used to tell us when you read it literally and then read it figuratively. So is there a second meaning that there could be that you're overlooking? And so literally Rebekah had 2 sons. Literally, one was stronger, and the older literally served the younger. Figuratively, Jacob lived his life as 2 different people. Figuratively, Jacob lived 2 different lives. He began as a person who hustled and did anything to gain what he felt like he deserved. The older of the 2 types of people, the person that Jacob was, heel grabber, that Jacob was served the younger, Israel. Eventually, Jacob was able to put the older personality, heel grabber, into submission and say, I'm not going to be that person anymore. I'm now going to be Israel. That's the decision that we all have, is we have to put into submission the person that's saying, I'm going to be selfish. That's what we have to do with our 2-year-old. If those of you who have children, especially if you have young children right now, you understand some things they just have to learn by getting hurt. That sounds terrible, but it's true. My daughter runs around the house, and we're like, hey, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. And then she hurts herself, and what's the first thing we do? What did I say? I said, this is exactly why I said, this is the reason right here. You are living the consequence right now. There are some things that we just have to learn by failing. There are some things that we just have to learn by doing and doing and doing and then failing at that. Jacob's life, he literally lived two different lifestyles. He lived life as a thief. He lived life as a hustler. He lived life as that person that would do whatever it took to get his things. And then, secondly, he lived his life as a blessing to others. Secondly, he lived his life as someone who God fought for. And out of him, nations were born. Because he was willing to lay down his old person, his old self, and take up his new self and live that life. That's the reason, is because Jacob was willing to say, you know what, I was wrong. I've been broken by God, and I understand that now this is not the position that I was supposed to be in. Jacob's selfish man was stronger until he became Israel. His selfish man was stronger until God fought for him. Until he was broken and God fought for him. That was the point. The Bible often refers to God as the God of Jacob. And today we sang, I'm calling on the God of Jacob. We sang that today. And the Bible refers to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob several times. And a lot of times it just refers to as the God of Jacob. To me, this means that he is God even when we are selfish and undeserving. Even when we're that old person. Even when we're hustling. Even when we're not on the right path. Even when we're not on the right person. Even when we're not on the right purpose. Even when we're doing all those things. He's still God. But our names can be changed to Israel. And then we can truly start winning. So today, I think that now you know what I mean when I was saying the worship that happened today, Pastor Susan, what she spoke after that worship time, and Fernando had no idea what I was going to be preaching about today. I don't think Pastor Susan did, and so all of this has just come together. Holy Spirit does that, and so I think today there are people in this room that are struggling with something that God wants to fight for you. I think there are people today that you're fighting some battle that God wants to fight for you if you will just let him win. I think there are people in this room today that are you're struggling. You're hustling. You're doing everything that you can. You're trying to be the provider for your family or for yourself or for someone you know or your friends. You're trying to do something. And God is saying, if you will just lose, if you will just break, if you will just turn this over to me, I will fight for you and I will win. We don't have to be the provider. We don't have to hustle. We don't have to be the winner because God wins every time. All you have to do is give whatever you're struggling with to God.